We're talking bulbs today on Pots and Trowels, and that's brought to you with the support of Cobra Garden and King Seeds. Well, we're at Newby Hall in North Yorkshire today for the Harrogate Autumn Flower Show, and it's bulb planting time, and the show's not open yet, so we're having a sneak preview to buy some bulbs that we're going to take home and put in a container. And here we are, because September, perfect time to get them. There's a big choice here, and at Hearts they've got a fantastic range of everything that you could want for the garden and to put in containers as well. So just a few little tips if you're buying them, and we're going to get a few for our container, is to make sure you get good quality bulbs. And I prefer, if possible, and this is why this is great, to buy bulbs that are loose, because that way you can select the ones that you want. And this is a really lovely one that we've got in our garden at home. This one is called Failure, which is a not too tall, only about 20 centimetres tall, 8 inches, and so it's a small flowering bulb, but it's a good stout one there. As you can see, it's nice and firm. We don't want any soft rots on them. That is a perfect bulb, and it's got this lovely papery skin on it. The one we're actually going to put in our pot is this one, which is called Minnow here, which I love it because it's multi-headed. It's got several flowers on the stalk. Again, it only grows to about 20 centimetres, 8 inches, and it's a lovely cream with a pale yellow centre. So I'm going to get some of these, which will go into our container, so I can pick the bigger bulbs, which are perfect. So that's some minnow. I also want some tulips. So tulips are over here. So follow me, Jill. Now, tulips we don't normally plant in the garden till a little bit later. So if you're going to put them in the garden, keep them cool. But if you're going to put them in a container, it's fine. But again, when we're looking for tulips, we're always looking for good sized bulb. The bigger the bulb for the particular type it is, the better the flower will be. If you plant smaller bulbs, they will still grow, but they might not flower, or the flowers will be smaller. So this, again, these are perfect. Look at these. They've got that lovely dry papery skin on them, lovely and firm. There's no soft bits on there. And this one is one called AAA, and this is one of the Darwin hybrids, and this is a really good one for naturalising in the garden. So again, I'm going to get a bag, get some of these, and then we can take them away and plant a lovely pot. Hi Jonathan, you all right?
Hi Martin.
I've got some iris, I've got some dwarf narcissus, and I've got some tulips. Anything else you can recommend? Something a bit special, something different?
You've got alliums, but have you seen this new Rasta Parrot? These new parrot tulips, fantastic. Only about 16 inches, 14 inches tall, but give a good splash of colour in. You're doing some lasagna planting.
I am, yeah.
They would mix in fantastic with them.
Right, and I love that colour. It's like
it's sort of like 3 different colours in one.
Right, okay, I'll get a bag and get a few of those as well.
Brilliant.
Lovely, thank you, Jonathan. We even get a fanfare from the band. Well, we're back home now, and I'm going to plant the container with the bulbs we got at the show. And this is going to be what we call a Lasagne pot. In other words, it's going to have multiple layers of bulbs that flower at different times. So here's the container that I've got, and you can use any container, but bear in mind, because we're putting various layers in, it needs to be a fairly deep container, and it also needs to have a drainage hole in it as well. That is really vital, because bulbs do not like being in wet, soggy compost. So drainage is essential, and to improve that drainage, there are various things that you can do. This one's got holes in the bottom, so I'm going to use some pieces of broken clay plant pot, which we call crocks, and I'm going to put those over the holes like that, so that they don't clog up with compost, and then the pot and the compost gets waterlogged. If you haven't got any broken pots, then stones that you've dug up out the garden, if you've got any coarse gravel, that is absolutely fine, but it is essential we get that drainage at the bottom of the pot. And then I'm using compost again. You don't want a compost that gets too wet and claggy over the winter. You want one that drains well. So it might be a case of buying a couple of different types. If you find one is a little bit wet, mix it with a more open, coarser one, or you could add some sharp grit in there. Alpine grit is perfect, or perlite. It just opens it up. So this one is quite a coarse one, nice and open. So this one is going to be absolutely fine, I'm sure. So what I'm going to do to start with is just put a couple of inches, 5 centimetres, maybe 3 inches, you know, 7.5 centimetres of compost down in the bottom of this pot. There we go. So I'd probably come about 1/3 of the way up the side of this container. And then you put the last flower in, the latest flowering bulbs in first. And this is this tulip that we've got here. And this is the one that's called AAA, one that we looked at, that's got beautiful sort of deep burnt orange and a bit of sort of almost red on it. And literally what I'm going to do is just space these in quite close together, but not touching. Now, a square pot isn't as easy to arrange them in as a round pot, but I'm putting in as many as I can because we want a really lovely display there. So as you can see, nice and close, but each one's got a little bit of space around it. So the reason for that is if one of them should rot or have a disease, it doesn't touch and transmit. There's always a barrier of compost around it. So just bed those onto that compost, and then we just simply cover them over with some more of this lovely friable compost with a bulb in it. Okay, so just a bit more compost. And again, we've got to put another layer in, so not too deep. So I'd probably put just again another couple of inches, 5 centimetres or so of compost. And then the next bulb to go in is this one. This is the daffodil we're putting in, the narcissus, and this is the one called minnow, which is about 20 centimetres tall, and it's a multi-headed one. And it has a cream petals and then a pale yellow trumpet, but there are several small heads on each stem. So I'm going to pop these in, just pushing them gently into the compost like that. Really good sized bulbs these are. These are going to flower well, make a great display. So make sure we can get as many in as we can. I think that will just about do us like that. And then to finish off a bit more compost over those. So that's layer 2. And then the third layer is going to be some iris. And these are iris reticulata, which are a dwarf form. These only grow to maybe, 15 centimetres at the most, sort of 10 to 15 centimetres. And these are the ones that have got a lovely sort of purpley blue flower on them. So these are quite small. So again, we can pop these in here like this, nice and close. Just push them down into that compost a little bit. Now, I'm not going to plant anything else on top of this, but some people might want to put some violas or little winter flowering pansies or primulas on there just to give a bit of immediate colour and interest. But I'm doing this purely as a spring planter. But if you were going to plant something in it, make sure you've got enough compost over these to be able to plant in it, so you keep them just that little bit lower in the pot. So we're just putting those in there, and these are going to look lovely. They really are superb.
What happens when the tulips grow first? Do they push the other bulbs out?
No, not at all, Mrs. Fish. What will happen is, as the tulips start to go up from the bottom, if there's a daffodil on top, it will just simply go round it. So they won't push it out, they'll just find their way through. It looks like there's a lot of bulbs in there, and there is, but they all do flower through. So just finish off by topping that off with a little bit more compost, like that, up to the top. We're not going to pat it down or firm it particularly, because we don't want to compress that compost and squash all the air out. Just a very light tap to get it level, and that is it. Now, this is moist compost, so I wouldn't water it, but if we now get suddenly a spell of warm weather and we don't get any rain for a week or two, I would probably give it a little bit of water, but there's enough moisture in there to start everything into growth. So what will happen is, the first to flower will be the little iris reticulata at the top. They're going to flower for us in March and get to about this height, those beautiful purpley blue flowers. At the same time, our daffodil minnow will be pushing up, and as soon as the flowers finish, on the iris, hopefully our little daffodils will flower at about this height, so we'll get those through April, and then the tulips will come through and flower at this height after the daffodils are finished. So we're going to have flower through March, April and May. So we're going to have lots and lots of wonderful colour in there. I'm going to now put this somewhere out of the way. Now, if birds are a problem in your garden or squirrels, then just get yourself a bit of chicken wire like this, wire net in, and I've just bent that so it sits over it. So if the birds suddenly think, yep, we're going to have a little scratch in that beautiful compost, or the squirrels want to do a little bit of digging, they can't get into it. I'm just going to keep that out in a nice sunny position outside, so it just warms the pot a bit, will encourage them to grow. As I say, we'll keep an eye on the watering, but the aim is to keep it moist but not wet, and then come next spring we're going to have a glorious display. And what we'll do once they're flowering is feed it with a liquid feed on a weekly basis. When they've all flowered, we'll allow them to die back, and most of these should then flower again if they build up enough energy the following year. So we can get 2 years out of this Lasagne planter. Now is the perfect time to do it. Here we are, 3rd week in September. If you're going to do it, aim to do it by the middle or the end of October at the very latest, just to give them time to make really good root system in the compost and start growing. So there you go, get planted. Well, thank you for watching Pots and Trowels, and don't forget, all our videos can be found on YouTube and the podcasts on your normal provider. We're going to plant some bulbs in the garden in a few weeks, but next week we're going to be taking pelargonium cuttings, so we'll see you then. Bye.